So how do you feel about that?
Okay.
Let me get your temperature to fix the thing.
So, big focus of the day is going to be modified Graceys. So, 15, 16. I brought some 17, 18s for y'all to look at. We're going to pass those around. And I have some implant instruments for you guys to look at, and I will leave them up here. I want everybody to come through and feel them. And somebody's missing their clamp and pull.
I just need to make sure.
Somebody else is missing their clamp and pull. Somebody's been borrowing from me. Who was it? So if you're ever missing stuff, come look at this giant pile of stuff that's up here. So one of the things I was going to borrow from somebody today was a pair of cotton pliers, but guess what? Don't need it because somebody has left it in a pile of stuff up here. So, so let me start.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Are you missing one too?
Oh no.
By the end of the quarter, can you still?
Clear.
Anybody seen a clear typodons? Anybody else who need to turn in their stuff? I know there are several of you probably.
I'm bleeding.
Never mind. Okay, so let's do this. Since we're in the implant mode in our brains, let me see if I can get this other mic to turn on without killing us.
Is it in the go? Did you turn it on?
Okay, how's not? How's that? Oh, it's not bad. AJ, how's the mic back there? Good? Awesome. Okay, so some of the things we talked about this morning with your implants. In clinic, we have, the contrast on this is great. Ms. Castillo, can you grab me some deck paper so that I can get this contrast to be a lot more
Oh, these are plastic probes.
That's better. Okay, so now that we don't have the crazy contrast, this will work. Okay, so these guys, these little sterile iPads, are little intraoral exam pads. So this is a plastic probe. So we typically use this for probing on your implants. So here's the thing. It's very rubbery, which sometimes is a good thing when you're trying to get around an implant has some significant bulkiness of the restoration, and you're trying to get around it to get down to the little skinny root form of the implant. I would say they're kind of pointy, and so be careful with it that you are really gentle. This end has the world's worst explorer on it. It is fully compliant with the take a blunt probe sideways and explore to see if you have an incipient or an active lesion for caries. They're just pointy enough to really poke yourself and have to go, have blood work. So there's that. They stink at evaluating calculus, and then the patient has ginormous pieces. So if you're screening a board patient, we use these sometimes, and it is a not terribly unreasonable screening instrument for that. So if you use one of these, the deal is never recap it like this, but don't ever do this. These guys, whether or, so there's a good example, it just poked through the little plastic tip that I was trying to put it in. So these will poke you, they will poke people. If you had them in the patient's mouth and you're done using it, where would this go?
The very box.
In the sharps. And that's why we have the long skinny opening to our sharps containers. Does it go in this way? It has to go in really straight, so it's fully contained inside the sharps container. Okay? So, this part of the pack, these guys actually can be sterilized. Probably not worth it, mostly. I refer to these, people will refer to these as disposable mirrors. I refer to them as patient mouth mirrors. That you're going to, when you're done instructing your patient for the day, screening, implant patient, whatever it is, you're going to send this home with them. You're going to show them how to wipe out the inside of their cheek to get rid of the fog, and they're going to use it in their house to be able to evaluate themselves. Please do not throw this plastic petrochemical thing that cost us money and will clog up the landfill away. Okay? Great patient motivator for the patients who don't see that, that's a molar that it has caries. That's why it has caries, because of the, oh my God, plaque on it. Right, so try to give this to the patient, just put them in their goodie bag. This goes in the sharps, so there's that. And those are available just inside the window. Here's our next thing, which is usually what you're going to get. You'll check out of clinic supply. This guy, which is, when Dr. Can was talking about plastic instruments, can you see how this looks kind of like a universal curet? How bulky is that? Very bulky, right? So these will work on the superstructure somewhat. They'll work somewhat around the neck of the implant. Thinking you'll ever get sub with these is not going to happen. Do we want to get sub? Usually not. Because we want to be really kind to that tissue that's not a junctional epithelium. It's long junctional epithelium like a rubber band, not Sharpie's fibers. Well, there's lots of discussion. I hope it's learning experiences that you all were talking about back there. So, being really, really careful with this to just work on calculus. Now, it's also pretty springy, so this can be a challenge. We sometimes have patients come in that have a lot of calculus. So in your reading, what did it say about what you can use to instrument the restoration that's on top of the implants? So what, as far as the gold crown, the PFM, whatever is on top of that implant, the restoration, how do we have to take care of that?
Stay away from it?
That one actually you can treat like any other crown or bridge. Right? So if there's calculus going up on the surface of that crown, you don't have to just kind of, pussyfoot around and try to use only plastic instruments to get stuff off. You could use an actual instrument to actually work on it. Be nice to it, right? Be kind. But that superstructure part of it is actually fine to carefully scale around. So, have I gone in there with a patient who, you remember the really heavy calculus on that mandibular full denture that was supported by the implant and the bars, and they had the just ginormous pieces of calculus. Oh, I have so cavatroned on that kind of thing. But stayed just on the actual bridge part, not on the implant part. The implant part, I was back to this thing. All right. There are other implant things that you saw in the articles and pictures that are like, one looks like a little wrench, a medium-sized wrench. One looks like a little sickle. One looks like kind of a shovel thing. Those are also less flexible than this guy, and in an office that has those, that's one of the things that will help you out. All right, next option, super duper. We have just one of these right now that I can locate, but I thought we had a couple. We'll have to look into that. This guy, we have 14 different kinds of cassettes. This one opens at this end. Okay, so now what are you seeing?
Titanium.
That's looking like something, right? So, this is going to look like, these guys are titanium scalers, and these guys are a little 1314-ish guy, a universal 1314. Sorry. Breathed the wrong way. Okay, we're good. Okay. It looks like a little sickle, looks like a little langer, right? And these guys are actually not super rigid, but they're actually metal instruments that do actually take some force. You can actually sharpen them. You're going to use this sharpening stone because this sharpening stone you'll rinse off after you sharpen, but this is not going to leave a lot of abrasiveness on the instrument that might cause damage to the titanium implant. And then you already got another version of the plastic Preclinical Pro. Okay? So that is if you have somebody who's got significant amounts of calculus, I'm just going to say skip the rubbery plastic thing. It is not worth killing yourself over, and shift over to that. Option number 3. As far as actual scaling things. This is super duper attractive, hardly been used at all. Ultrasonic tip. All right, here's the critical thing about this. Just because the box says ultrasonic or implant tip, on it, doesn't mean that's where you stop. The clinic supply folks are going to give you this. Please don't lose the little blue tip. Okay? Because this is actually what you're going to scale with. So this is going to cover the ultrasonic tip. And here's how you put these guys on. You really have to grab them with cotton pliers, usually is the best. And this actually, will snap on to your tip like that. It actually just jumped on there. So it won't come off. Okay, so here's the critical thing. I'm waiting for everybody's attention. So here's the critical thing. So, what if you don't snap this on really securely? Right? Down their throat worries me less than down into a lung, because that's a surgery. Okay? So, you're going to make really, really sure that this is snapped on correctly, and it's really, really on there. So you're not going to put it first in their mouth and turn the thing on, because if it flies off, I want it to fly off somewhere besides in your mouth. So you're going to use this. It's a medium hard plastic. It will take some stuff off. And it's certainly faster than just the really springy plastic guys. And because it's smaller, same idea with the regular ultrasonic dip, it's going to get into places that are harder to access.
Does it matter which ultrasonic tip, like that we use, like blue or purple or brown?
It's this particular tip. So this yellow guy from Clinic Supply. You don't have
We
them.
don't have it.
You can't just take this little guy, excellent question, and shove it onto any of your tips. This actually has the tip with the little grabber at the end, so it'll hang on to the little plastic tip. Yeah.
When I used it last time, it like water splashed really well, like the other one.
So the little tip, the edge of it kind of interferes with the water flow. Fortunately, you're getting enough water to it that it's not going to heat up enough to really damage the tissue around the implant. So that because it's not a natural tooth, we can be a little less super cautious about that.
Does that need to be replaced?
Then the blue thing is disposable at the end, and the yellow tip goes back into the cassette, back to the Clinic Supply.
Can we also use these around crown margins?
No. You want more oomph around crown margins, because around crown margins, you're going to not be on the crown margin.
Oh.
You're going to be on the tooth.
Okay.
So let me make sure y'all heard that.
Can't hear it. We can't hear you. What was your question?
So the deal is, if you are trying to scale around a crown margin, would this be good? Here's the thing with an ultrasonic around a crown margin. You are not going to scale the crown margin. You're going to scale the tooth next to the crown margin. Right? Horizontal strokes. Every once in a while you actually get calculus on a crown. Then you have to do that feather light, touch the outside of the calculus. Hopefully it pops right off, which usually it does. But lots of times you can, because it's not, it's metal versus a biological system, it doesn't adhere to the crowns as much. Every once in a while you have cruddy crowns that are really poorly done PFMs or destroyed over time PFMs. Then you have calculus on crowns more. Yes?
So you're talking about like crowns of as far as like restorative.
Right, so she was saying, would we use this on crowns? You would not use this. And my advice is, remember that you're scaling, whatever you're scaling with, on the tooth, not the crown.
So whenever if they did have calculus on the crown, can you use your, so how do you get it off?
So you can use hand instruments carefully, or you can carefully use the ultrasonic if it's really, really, really heavy. Calculus generally does not adhere to crowns as much as natural teeth. Sorry about the frustration with this microphone. Okay, so this particular ultrasonic tip, implants only. What's the important thing to remember to put on this implant tip? The blue plastic. What are you going to check on the blue plastic? That it's really snapped on there. It's going to snap on. Okay, you're going to start it outside the mouth, right? And make sure you have reasonable water. Then same idea, you're going to be nice to the tissue. You're not going to take this thing and like shove it 6 millimeters sub. It's not okay. You're going to be as kind as you can. It's really counterintuitive, but we do lots and lots of very supragingival or just at the gingival margin around implants. Because you'd think, oh my gosh, I have to clean this perfectly because it's so vulnerable. It's in a patient that's already had a problem, and maybe they're terrible with their hygiene, and now we have this thing that just basically has a rubber band around it instead of Sharpie's fibers in it, right? So, woo, scary. But we have to be really cautious not to traumatize the tissue. So it's a balance between getting the biofilm and everything off, and you absolutely have to get calculus off, but not traumatizing that attachment to the neck of the implant. Now, glycine powder polishing is a whole different deal that we're going to talk about later. Hugh Frady has the machine that does it. It looks really, really awesome. I don't know how to do it myself yet, but I'm looking forward to, with Ms. Ellington, that you probably will have that experience. But that looks like the thing of the future because it will actually go subgingival. It is really efficient at getting the plaque off of the subgingival areas without causing trauma. and better than the air polishing system that we currently have, which is pretty assertive. We'll say that. Okay. So then your options then are that ultrasonic tip, your metal tips that are titanium, and your springy plastic guy if it's not a whole lot and it's just some biofilm. And the other thing not to forget is that, so okay, also don't forget to take this guy off because it's disposable. Probably don't do it with your fingers like I just did because it's like, but the other thing then to remember is that a lot of this stuff that forms around the necks of the implants is actually very lightly calcified calculus, and it actually will, what do you know, polish and floss off. So if you need to, get some good floss and work on those teeth, and a whole chunk of stuff will just, a whole bunch of this stuff will actually just pop off of the tooth. All right. Now, on to our, let's see if I can do this. Mic. How's the mic at this point? The other. Can't be great. How's the mic back there?
Okay.
It's okay? Okay. All right. So, advanced instrumentation. Moving on to the root planing machine. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. It's just a lovely view. Lovely, lovely. I'm looking forward to when that's your, we start setting up a year from now the chance for your graduation. Are we not looking forward to that? That's an even better view. They're kind of ugly tents, but they're awesome. What's that?
Can't wait to get rid of this.
No, I'm ready for the birdies to fly the next when you're ready. Have a productive year with us, and then I'm sad, happy to see you go. Okay, so we want to have correct operator and patient positioning to maximize your efficiency and your effectiveness in scaling. And we're specifically going to be looking at Graceys, modified Graceys. We're also going to throw in your Langer 3-4 today to give you a little bit more work on that. That's the one that's universal that we haven't spent a whole lot of time talking about. So we've got to sit down, guys. I'm just going to be the disembodied voice. Sorry. We want to make sure you can sharpen these guys, and what do you know, face parallel to the floor, stone at 1 o'clock or 11 o'clock for a lefty still works on this. So determining the need for instrument sharpening, making sure you have the correct sharpening technique, and we really want to be able to look at the design today of these instruments so that you can preserve that design when you're sharpening them. All right, brief overview, review. So, area-specific curets. They've got a long, complex lower shank compared to a universal curet. So our 1011, you know, the butter knife, pretty straight, not super complicated, good for things where you need a long, straight instrument to get in there. But the typical universal is more like the Columbia 1314. Pretty complicated design to it, but it actually is a fairly short blade and fairly short instrument overall. So these Graceys have longer, lower shanks, and for posterior instruments they're more complex. And the big deal is, of course, that their face is tilted to reach a specific surface. And therefore they have only one working cutting edge per working edge, or as I think of it, the cutting edge, but they, in your book I know, call it the working cutting edge. So remember, it's LOL, the lower outer longer edge. We're going to have that automatically adapted to the tooth when we have our terminal shank in a good position. And remember, we have this theoretical 0 degree insertion. Have you all tried that on your type it out, by the way? actual 0 degree insertion where the face of the blade is flat against the tooth, it's not achievable. So I'm just going to say, know that that's the ideal for the test question on possibly the board exam, but really you're just going to close up your angle so you're nice to the tissue. So if we're then adapting to the tooth, we're going to make sure that we get below the piece of calculus, that we open up our angle to that 70 degrees. If we're too close, 45 degrees or less, you're just burnishing the calculus. If you're greater than 90 degrees, it's not going to grab onto the calculus. So we're now thinking, instead of leaning in one way or the other to adapt the universal blade, we're making sure that that terminal shank is really parallel to the surface we're working on. Remember how I talked about you have to evaluate what angle is this particular surface, using your x-ray vision to look in there, and does this root bend a certain way that I have to change where my terminal shank is. And you remember that only 1 to 2 millimeters of the side of the toe is flush against the tooth. It's only going to be a very narrow spot. It's actually adapted. So, were you super surprised when we started taking that black paint off? Because you thought, oh my gosh, I'm getting like 3 millimeters wide, this big chunks of stuff, right? Because the fake calculus comes flying off in big pieces. So we have that job of saying, oops, sorry, let's get this black paint on here, and you figure out that, you know, if you get a 1 millimeter wide stroke on there, you're usually doing good. We're going to have vertical, horizontal, oblique strokes. So there's the correct angulation, making sure we close up to slide in. 0 degrees, really not going to happen. But closing up, opening up to a good angle. If we're too closed, it's not going to work. If we're too open, it's not going to work. All right. So, functional shank is the whole shank, from the handle to the heel of the instrument. The lower or the terminal shank is just that last little bit before the heel. Remember we talked about it being the shin part before the heel. When we're talking about these shanks, the more complex or more bendy the shank, usually the more posteriorly it can be used. So what instrument is this guy? Anybody recognize that one? This guy, this is a Gracey 1112. So not super duper bendy, but it does have, it's not a great picture, it's a little hard to recognize. But longer, more complex functional shank. So this is somewhat bendy. The 1314 is more bendy than this because it's meant to be used on the distals. The 1112 is designed to be used on the mesials, right? Okay. So, remember Dr. Graceys did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So, those standard Gracey Curets are really designed to go in about 4 millimeters. How often have we seen 4 millimeters on your patients already? Pretty often, right? Your partner may have had a 4 millimeter pocket. So, we figured out, gosh, let's make these things so that we can really, really reach into the pocket. So we changed them. So, the area-specific curets that we had, we extended that lower shank, and, or some of them, also have miniature working ends. So these are modifications to that standard Dr. Graceys design. So, if you want to take out your regular 1112 and your regular 1314, and then your mini 1112 and mini 1314, and we can compare. So we determined that your regular Graceys are gray, right? Gracey gray. And Gracey gray, and they are SG 11, 12, or 13, 14. So, and then our minis are we decided lab sassy. So SAS, 11, 12, and 13, 14, and they are the purple bands. All right, and then the other thing that you're going to grab while you're in there, which is the pink band, is your Langer 3/4. So about half the class, we've gone over this somewhat in lab. So if you are having trouble, if you're having trouble, then get your classmate to give you a hand. I'm also going to have faculty start walking around to be able to help you out. So regular 11, 12, regular 13, 14, mini extended 11, 12, mini extended 13, 14, and Langer. So that's the S.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I'm thinking about
Okay, so if you're having any trouble figuring out what's up, start with your classmate, and then we're going to have faculty walk around and give you hand slow.
So they want to do
All right.
you or no?
Okay. Okay. So when you're talking about Gracie, the smaller numbers mean what? You're going to use them where? More anterior. Okay. So we don't, remember how I talked about we don't have Gracie 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, which are way straighter instruments, because we cheat and we use 11, 12. So if it's a lower number and if it's a straighter shank without the contraangle, you're used on anterior tooth. We are more concerned with these minis being able to get into the posterior. So here's a picture of your standard shank and your extended shank. So there are 3 more millimeters on those extended shanks so that you can get into the base of the peeper pocket. So hold up your mini 11, 12 and your regular 11, 12 together. And take a look at that terminal shank. And see how that's a lot longer. I mean, 3 millimeters isn't really huge, but when we're talking about in the mouth, 3 millimeters is a big deal getting to a deeper pocket. All right, then the other thing that we did with these guys is, remember me talking in the beginning about you always, when you're my age, you had that one set of Graceys you sharpened really, really tiny, and you did a good job. It was still really sharp, but it was really, really tiny, and it had its own little shrine in the drawer. And finally one day somebody went, what the heck, we could just make them short? So indeed, the little miniature end, really, really helpful. So here's what I'd like you to do. Go up to the maxillary dominant side, so, you know, number 3 if you're a righty, number 14 if you're a lefty. And just hold one of those, that 11-12 regular Gracie and the 11-12 mini, like that, up to those roots. And tell me what you think about where those meanings are really going to help you. And they'll help on anteriors. And what else? Take a look at that maxillary molar. Hold them up next to that maxillary molar.
Sorry, I couldn't hear.
Mini and regular 11-12.
Okay, on a specific
Okay.
tape.
Can you remind me we need to have a big stink about how we can't hear back here? I forget in between. No, it's because we have to do this and speak back to the top. Because it's not too bad up here. And it's terrible back there.
The mini essay is
I don't know if you remember, like, week 2, Ryan's up here bellowing. Then up the recorder.
it's somewhat better than that.
Oh, I have that. These now have batteries, will travel. And these up and start hearing around the back. Right, because Sabine should not have to carry batteries for her whole 2 years here. Right? You could have a whole separate backpack just to carry the batteries for the mics around here. We can give you a holster just for batteries. So, we have instruments out. Let's get eyewear on. You should have your own eyewear and not be using the disposable stuff all the time. If you have eyeglasses, your Apple Vision Saver shields are up here.
Even my batteries are lockers. But I don't think I have any. Yeah, I can check. But last time I saw them, they were in my. To be honest, they're in my room. Nah, last time I saw them, they weren't in my locker. They were in my room. There you go.
Okay. So, sorry, I should have told you in the beginning. My bad. To get set up. I apologize. But make sure you bring your Make sure you bring your instruments and your typing on always when you come to lab, unless it's specifically different. Okay, like, only show up on your assessment time. If we're doing an assessment, otherwise bring your stuff. Saves us a lot of time. You're gonna have to tell me what's happening over there later so I understand. Okay. Yeah. Okay. On with the lecture with hands-on visual aids. Okay, so back to that maxillary molar. The coughing means the inhaler's working. I'm really okay. So, mini, extended, and regular 11-12. Hold those guys up next to those molar roots. Tell me what you think. Those of you who've been in lab are like, already been there, done that, right? What do you guys think? The sassy, the mini, what do you like about that? Gets in the furcation. Okay. How about the direct facial or direct lingual where the roots get skinnier, right? If you hold your, if you hold the standard 11-12 and adapt to the maxillary first premolar, mesial of the maxillary first premolar, and you picture having gingiva across that whole facial. So when you adapt with the regular 11-12, how far across that tooth surface does that end span? The whole thing, right? So if you're scaling from the facial, what part of the tooth are you actually scaling on? The palatal half of the root half the time, right? It's reaching way across. All right, now take your mini 11-12 and go into that mesial. What's the giant anatomical feature on the mesial of your maxillary first premolar? Longitudinal developmental depression. That's, as big as a bathtub on some people. And holds calculus like crazy, right? And the canine is really triangular and kind of pokes into the way of that big depression. So, if you're trying to get right at the line angle and into the depression, how comfortable is that 11-12? Mini. Nice, right? Okay. So, again, 11-12, we're cheating with it, right? Because it's designed for what surface? Mesials only, right? And we're cheating when we use it on the facial and lingual. Not using it for its intended purpose. And mostly we get away with it. How much do you like using the 11-12 regular Gracey on a distal line angle? Not, right? How about on the maxillary molar that you try the distal line angle coming forward with your mini? Try the mini.
That's nice.
Pretty nice, right? So here's one of the secrets with a really skinny root. Everybody look at me for just a sec. So, lower anterior teeth. Who's slipped off the lower anterior tooth and stuck their patient in the papilla? I'll own it first. You can raise your hands, it's okay. It's happened, right? We don't want to be on film doing it on security. Okay. How did you fix it so you're not sliding off the tooth? What kind of strokes keep you better on the tooth? Short, controlled. What direction? Vertical strokes. Okay. You know how you kind of also hate mandibular premolars because they're round and skinny and you slide around? So now let's switch over with your mini and do some vertical strokes. I'm going to give up on this side. Try to do some vertical strokes. I almost have a voice again because I have the new inhaler. With mini on your mandibular premolars. Try that. How's this guy?
So much better.
Sorry. Oh, buccal or lingual. Lingual, actually, you hate lingual worse, right? Do it on the lingual. Try your mini, 11, 12. Vertical strokes on your mandibular premolars. Do it on the non-dominant side. The dominant side's really hard. So righties try it on 20, 21. Lefties try it on 28, 29. Is that feeling okay? Less slippy? Harder on the paint than the calculus? I feel like the paint's kind of slippery, right? Pretty good? Okay. So, that's how tobacco stain is, Miss Hayden says. Yep. It's like trying to scrape varnish off the teeth. Okay. So, if you have a skinny root, one of the things that's really going to help you is do vertical strokes. If it's a little skinny root, don't take the giant regular Gracie and try to shove it down in that pocket. Use something as skinny as the root. How are you going to decide how big the root is? X-rays, right? Plus, you're going to remember your oral anatomy, right? You're going to think about what should this on average look like, but confirm with X-rays. Okay. So, miniature working in. So, yes, lower anteriors, vertical strokes, really, really much easier to be able to get straight up the root surface and not slip around. All right, ready for a big secret? A really fun secret. Let's take your 13-14 mini. So your 13-14 mini, where is it meant to be used? Distal infurcations, right? Tiny places. Okay. So we're going to go adapt to the distal of the first premolar. So righties do 21, lefties do 28. And the distal of the premolar vertical strokes, pretty good, yes? Yeah. Vertical strokes, straight up the tooth, happier. Okay. Now go the distal of the canine. Happy? Campers? Good. Now go to the distal of the lateral. Oh, right? We always get that. Oh. Okay, now go to the distal of the central. See how you're starting to automatically go around in your seating position to 12 o'clock? You make me so happy, so proud. I'm so excited. So the distal and central, happy campers, yes? All right, ready? What surface do we use this on? Go to the mesial of the other central.
Do you prefer lingual or buccal?
Lingual. Mesial lingual of the other central. Yep. Just go with me. Right? I'm getting a fair number of whoa. Okay, so here's the deal. We can't tell you these things in the beginning because it would be too confusing. Okay, but is our terminal shank parallel? Right? Is our cutting edge adapted correctly to the tooth? Are you doing a lovely controlled short vertical stroke? Maybe. Kevin says maybe. Okay, let's go to the mesial of the next tooth, the lateral. Still pretty good? Maybe your patient needs to move for you. Maybe you're going to head towards 1 o'clock if you're a righty, or 11 if you're a lefty. Lots of good scaling noises. Okay. Still pretty happy. All right. Now go to the mesial of the other canine. Is that harder or easier? Doesn't really work. Okay. So, this is the deal with this. I'm going to send a message to all the faculty now that we have started practicing using your 13-14 on the lingual of the mandibular anterior. Okay, but you're going to do some lab time first, starting today, before you do this on a patient. And you'll have somebody kind of watch you for a little bit when you do it on a patient. But is this not more comfortable if you're trying to get? And the really nice thing about the mini is that you can get on the direct lingual. You know that piece of calculus right down near the bottom of the curve of the tissue that you couldn't get with your 13-14 because you're sliding around and hacking up the papilla a little bit, causing a little tissue trying. Right, that thing? Try this 13-14 trick. Oh my gosh. Okay, so does the other end work as well? Yes. So flipping ends. You would then go to, if you're right-handed, you would go to the distal 28, distal 27, distal 26, mesial 25, mesial 24, and then 23 is okay. I lost track there. There were some wrong surfaces. Sorry. You'll just keep going until it doesn't work and then stop. Who's taping me up here? Brian. Yeah, edit that. I said the wrong surface in there, sorry. Okay. So, miniature working end, really nice on these little skinny lower anteriors. I really like them on premolars, and they're invaluable in furcation and getting into the really, really deep, narrow pockets that happen. Because remember, we're talking about the teeth being gradually skinnier as they go down, generally very gross simplification. They're like an ice cream cone. So the further towards the tip you get of the ice cream cone, the skinnier everything is. So, minis, 50% shorter and a little skinnier than the regular blades. The extended shank really helps you get into those deep areas. So narrow pockets greater than 4 millimeters deep. They started out calling these after fives. Not like, yeah, that thing was so deep and narrow I had to work till after 5. No, after 5 millimeters to get that down into that deep pocket. That working in is half the length of standard Gracie and about 10% thinner. All right. So the extended shanks, deep pockets, root planing. So what's the difference between these shanks on the regular Graceys, the gray Graceys that we have, and the shank of the minis, besides the length of the shank? Besides the length and the bends. Longer shank. The bends are the same, but longer shank. What is the, remember when we looked at our regular Graceys, we talked about the shank was special from your regular garden variety Gracie. What's the difference on our regular Graceys with your shanks? Do you remember that they're rigid? Kinda? Okay. So your regular Graceys are actually rigid Graceys. So your minis are not rigid Graceys. So what difference does that make in the type of deposits you can take off? Smaller, okay? So remember we talked about, and we're going to talk in real detail about the order of instrumentation by the end of this quarter. What do you pick first? What do you pick second? What do you pick third? All the way to the end. Rigid Graceys are not as strong as sickles. So you're going to get medium pieces with the rigid Graceys, not big, ginormous hunks. But they are more strong than the minis. So the minis are really going to be getting littler pieces, doing root planing. If you really need to get a big piece off in a little skinny area, what's going to be your go-to instrument? Tiny, skinny places with heavy calculus. Ultrasonic. Do your Cavitron. Please, God, use your Cavitron. Save yourselves. Right? So then you would smooth out with that.
We just wanted to clarify something because we're not sure they saw you turn. So when you said flip the end on the 13-14, we continue, go to 8 o'clock position or 4 o'clock and do surfaces towards. Is that what you meant? Because
okay, let me clarify on the lower interiors with the 13-14. So, sorry, when I said, here's the big deal. You have to first, when you're going to do those linguals, you're going to adapt first to the first premolar, because that'll get you the correct end. Okay? And then you'll keep going across, and it depends on where you're starting. So if you are doing the distal of 28 and you're right-handed, you're going to be doing surfaces away, right? So you're going to sit at what position? 12 o'clock. If you're doing lower interiors. Okay?
If I took 11, you mean 12? Yes.
12.
Correct.
Oi. I'm going to get better sleep now that I can breathe again, and then I can think again. I'm so sorry. Sorry, Brian. Okay. There'll be a lot of editing of the notes. Okay. So, 12 o'clock, because you're doing surfaces away. When you're doing surfaces towards, you would adapt to the end that will go to the distal lingual of 28 and sit at what position? 8 o'clock. Okay, so for lefties, 12 o'clock's the same. You'd be at 4. Got it. Awesome.
So that's what you meant. That's what you meant then by flipping ends. You're going to change your clock position. One side will be for surfaces away, one side will be for surfaces towards with your 13-14 going around. She moved perfectly, but I think everybody was working in the mouth when she said that.
Sorry.
Can I ask?
Also kinesthetic learner, so, right?
Just so you have to look for adaptation, so make sure that the terminal shank is parallel to the long axis of the tooth and that you're using a lower cutting edge. Okay, so the same process that would apply for adapting the posteriors.
And so the easiest thing is go adapt in the posterior sextant first. Do that, right? Figure out which end, don't just go crazy. At least go to your first premolar, figure out which end you're using, and adapt it correctly, and then you can go through the anterior sextant. Okay, so, is there anything else here I can confuse you on? Okay, so we're talking about narrow, deep pockets. So deep pockets is the extended shank, narrow is the mini part, and it is all about access. Debriding root branches, right? So the furcation area is great, but remember you still have to get the actual roots that have divided. And then the root concavities, the little rounded toe, will actually get in there nicely, and absolutely line angles. Okay, of course when you're down here with these mini extended things, 5 millimeters or deeper, how comfortable is your patient going to be? Probably not comfortable, right? Now, local anesthesia does not give you permission to be brutal, right? Because they wake up eventually. You're going to be really, really kind to the tissue. But you need to have patients that you're going to use this stuff on mostly really numb. I would want to be really numb. You would want to be really numb. So you're not going to say, would you like to be numb? You're going to say, I'll be getting you numb today so that you're super comfortable during this. That way you can actually extend into those surfaces carefully, adapt carefully, without the patient climbing out of the chair, right? And without you going, oh my God, they're going to move, right? So nobody needs that to happen to their blood pressure, you or the patient. And it's just going to be a whole lot easier to get to a lot of places compared to the standard Graceys and the universal curets. Okay, flexible shanks, we talked about already. They're a little springy. They're going to be more debriding roots, root planing versus the rigid is better at getting some heavier pieces. If you look at that shank, you can visually see the difference in the thickness. The rigid shank ones, it's the same blade as the standard Gracie, it's just that thicker shank. Now, their stronger shank, it does reduce somewhat your ability to have good tactile sensitivity. Right, so as your tactile sensitivity improves, it's going to be a whole lot easier. The less rigid, the more flexible shanks, you're going to have increased tactile sensitivity, but you're really going to want to use it for fine deposits, because if you try to grab something heavier, it's going to spring over it or slide off of it, and that's when you start causing tissue trauma, when you're trying to overwork an instrument. So you can have rigid extended shanks, you can have rigid regular shanks, you can have regular shank with a mini blade. I just think it's way more useful to have the extended shank with the mini blade because it gives you the most versatility to get into the tougher spot. So the larger the piece of the calculus, the more rigid the shank you'll need. Smaller piece, we can get away with more flexible shank. Remember, we're going to be doing the 13, 14 for the distals. And we're going to do all the distals in that whole sextant. And then you would switch over to the 11, 12 and be able to do the directed mesial. Same idea, you're going to get into that middle part, that get ready zone. Remember, gross motor, direct vision, get into your spot, switch over to your fine motor and your indirect vision. You're going to lower that instrument handle to be able, or change your instrument handle angulation to be able to hug the base of the blade against the tooth, insert it into the pocket, and then open it up so that you're good scaling angulation. All right, so you're going to be at 70 degrees to the surface you're trying to scale as long as your terminal shank is parallel to that surface. Here's the other thing with this picture. There always has to be a little space between the heel of the tooth and the surface you're scaling. Is Lena, how can I tell if I'm rolled up on the side of my toe? This is how. This is your visual cue from your terminal shank to the heel. So if the heel is hugged up against the tooth, then you're actually going to be more in the middle of your blade. And you are not going to be up on the side of the toe. So there always has to be that little space between the heel and the tooth surface. I think we've talked ad nauseum about channel scaling. Have we talked about channel scaling enough? Do you get it? Okay, good. All right, so more rigid instruments, more powerful instruments, you're going to use those first. So ultrasonics, the medium inserts on higher power. You have more finishing files. We're going to talk about files soon. Sickles, you can go a little sub. They will crank off a bunch of calculus. Do that second. Rigid curets. And then you're going to use standard curets and area-specific curets, really thin, finishing kind of things as you move through the case. Start with the dynamite, end with the little tiny file. All right, 15, 16. Let's pick that guy up. So, what is the deal with the 15, 16? What instrument is it like? It's like a 13, 14, and 11, 12 put together. Okay, so what kind of shank does it have? 13, 14 shank, but the blade is honed to what? 11, 12. Okay, so remember we get away with using the 11, 12 on the facial and lingual. I'm going to have you go to the mesial of a second or third molar. Really third molar. On the mandible. Maxillary, I'm not as excited about this because I can do an extra oral fulcrum, right? Because, woohoo, advanced instrumentation. Not basic here at Loma Linda, we're extra. So, 15, 16. Good on the mesial of a third molar, mandibular third molar, yes? Awesome. Swing on out to the facial, tell me what you think. That's a no, right? How about the lingual? Even knower, right? Horrible. It's horrible, Ms. Lynn. Yeah. So, 11, 12, remember we're cheating. Do what you can to make it work facial and lingual. 15, 16, mesial. Mesial, mesial, mesial. It's just not worth using on the directs. It's way too bendy. It makes your handle do squirrely things to work. So, on those mesials, guess what? Same old thing as 11, 12 to adapt it, only now, because it has a 13, 14 bend, your handle is not smashing into the patient's maxilla, right? You have a chance of getting your hand in there and getting a fulcrum. And you don't want to do like, can I just break your mandible off so that we can get in here because this is just too hard. Okay. So here's Miss Heidi. I know you haven't had a chance to meet her, and I keep bringing her up. She's an awesome lady. Again, I left her pictures in because this is her a while back. Oh, let's see. It might be George on the top. I can't see that well on this screen. As George. Okay, that's her husband, who's also an awesome human being. Okay, so what's the point of this picture? Right? So they're on the different edges of their water ski, right? Same idea on this. You got to figure out what is the edge that's going to work to adapt to the tooth, right? So, making sure, same as any other Gracie, lower, outer, longer, LOL. It's got that one cutting edge. In the book it says the working cutting edge. It's the cutting edge. All right? So, easier to get a good neutral hand position and seating position, and like I say, you don't feel like you have to break your mandible off to be able to get to the mesials of the third molars. Same adaptation, and you're just going to be able to get your terminal shank really parallel to that tooth surface. How weird are third molars? Pretty weird. So what's your go-to thing to decide how your terminal shank is going to point? X-rays, right? Look at your X-rays. Okay, so that's your 15, 16. Pretty easy. Do I really love it on the maxillary? Not as much. Like I say, I can do that extra oral fulcrum, but it can be helpful to be used on the maxillary. What kind of patient do you think it might be really good for? Anybody had the patient when you say open wide and they open approximately 4 millimeters? Right? Oh, you're Parker, okay. So your 15-16 is good for patients on the maxillary who have really limited opening. So if your poor patient has OMG, TMJ, then this is also a really good use of it maxillary. Okay. So, Langers. This is going to be your Langer 3-4. So it's your SL3-4. All right. What does that look like? What kind of curets? It's a universal curette blade, right? What kind of shank does it have? Gracey what? 13, 14. I'm starting to hear 13, 14. Okay, good. It's lovely to hear you start analyzing. Okay, so this is a universal curette, but it's on a 13, 14 shank, which is why they called it a 3-4. There's a Langer 1-2. What kind of shank do you think that has? An 11, 12. Okay, so this is your Langer 3-4. What can be one of the annoying things about a Gracey Curet? Only one surface at a time, right? So if you want to crank your way through distal direct mesial, distal direct mesial, distal direct mesial, here's your friend. Where does it work the best? Posteriors. What's going to be the big difference between this and the Gracey? Two cutting edges per working end. So it does have a rigid shank. So what are you going to change when you adapt the blade of this instrument to the tooth surface?
Angulation?
Going to change your angulation. So now you have to lean in like we do with a 13-14 Columbia or with the 10-11, right? So you're going to drop your hand, if you're on the mandible, you're going to drop your handle down for the distals, you're going to raise it up for the mesials. Eyeballs this way, nod at me, is making sense? Yes? Making sense? Kinda, M's not sure. Okay, we'll get with you. Okay, so that's your 3-4 maxillary mandibular posterior teeth. Really great on the mesial and distal. Okay, so like your 15-16, try it on a facial, see what you think. Your Langer 3-4. Langer 3-4.
This before they scale too much off. Does that matter? Yeah, you kind of see the thing, but
Okay, so not so good on the directs because it's a really bendy shank, right? Okay, so mesials and distals. Okay, so we also have 17, 18. So for this, go ahead and put down your instruments and just look at pictures. Depending on how industrious you were scaling just now, we're going to take your word for it that you came with things painted. Okay, so top picture, Gracey 13, 14. Bottom picture, what? 17, 18. So, anybody had a patient with a pretty good pocket on the distal of a mandibular third molar? Right? And you felt like you had to like crawl in on their tongue to try to get anything in there? So, this is super duper bendy. And it is meant to be able to, so it's going to be the same cutting edge as the 1314, but now that bend in the shank that makes it the Graceys is actually going to be even, or sorry, that makes the posterior Graceys is going to be even more acute. So same thing as the 1314, but it's like you took a pair of pliers and cranked it more. Okay, so we'll get down to the distals. So, I have one cassette of these. We're going to bounce them around between groups so that you can just try it. They tend to be fairly limited. How many times do you have a deep pocket on the distal of 17 or 32? Not super often. So to save you expense, we decided the 15-16 was a better investment. But you can try these out. So definitely just the distal. Start at the line angle, go to the distal. Here is the thing. Use it, just really pay attention to the blade. Do the same exact things. But with the 15-16 on the mandible, you could get your handle down a little bit. This is going to be a little bit further down so that you'll be able to get in under the maxilla. And it is going to be this different fulcrum. So this is the hard part about it. Your handle is going to wind up so close to the anterior teeth that we spent all this time saying, stand up, stand up, stand up. This one you're actually going to bring your fulcrum over into this double fulcrum. So this is something, if you want to do it, you can practice with your type doc before you're going to do this on a real person. So see how now, instead of standing up and being on top of the anteriors, with the handle, the two finger bones stacked up on top of those lower centrals, now this operator has their middle finger sitting on the incisals, and the handle's on top of their middle finger, and their ring finger is actually in the facials. So if you're doing this with something besides a 17-18, stop it. But if you're doing this with a 17-18, this is the way that you're actually going to be stable. So you use this double fulcrum. This is the only way to really get the handle down there to the point where you can really adapt. And it will also then work for maxillary posterior. Again, I don't find that I need to use it a lot because I wind up just dropping my hand further down near the angle of their jaw. But if you have that patient that has limited opening because they have bad PMJ, then this is a good deal. So, cannot do a really tall fulcrum like the top picture because the handle's too high and the tooth to face of the blade angle, and the blade's too open. It's just going to skim over the surface. And if you're way down in this weird angulation in the bottom picture, you're just going to be flailing around. It's not going to work. All right, so remember, if we need to do something hard, we need bigger pressure. You're going to keep your fulcrum finger and your middle finger together, not split your fulcrum so you have really good stability. You're going to really think about where your fulcrum location is good, and it's really going to depend on what's happening in the pocket. We had the cookbook stuff in the beginning where it's me, my patient, my equipment, all of that stuff. Now you're going to start thinking, what curette or other instrument can I use to get into this pocket and touch that piece of calculus? What am I in my cassette? Dear God, can I get this piece off with? Let's get it in a good angulation there, and then you can figure out where can I make a good fulcrum when this handle's in this position. When I have a good fulcrum and my hand's in a good position, then where can I sit ergonomically to make that happen, right? So we started from the outside and worked in. Now we're going to think about starting at the piece that you're trying to get off and be more analytical about it. Remember, scaling strokes, short, powerful, really controlled, cutting edge, really engaging the surface, biting, cutting, fracturing strokes, using your whole hand and arm together, pivoting, rocking, side to side, up or down. Remember, sharp, 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 sharp. If it's not sharp, what are we doing? All right, so take a 5-minute break. We're going to start with evens on this side. Odds will be over on the other side. Mrs. Hayden is helping you with what part of your health part of your patient? That was a big hint. Health history only, right? She doesn't need to talk about 25 patients today, start to finish. Health history only. I'll have the papers out in a minute for you guys to have. And we do have our, everybody look at me, we have a reflection today. I've given y'all a lot of grace because whoops. I always love that Miss Linda, I was scaling on my typing out so hard. I know you probably were, but way to suck up. So, but I haven't seen you in here after 5, so I'm excited about that. So, make sure by 6 o'clock, don't leave without doing your self-reflection. Take a little break. We'll all have paperwork. We'll be split up. Miss Hayton will be over there. The rest of us will be over here. How soon is assessment coming? 3 weeks? Okay, great. So we're going to work on all those things that you're going to be assessed on, but we'll also talk about the mini Graceys and the 15, 16. Give you a chance for the 17, 18. Questions? We're good? Okay, break. So, get papers. Yeah, I have a folder that has
Oh, I know. Okay. And I only caught the last part of it. Yeah, on like the broom. Yeah.
Somebody's tired.
We tried to do it on me, but I knew it was funny. I was like, nah. We tried to do it like that. I was like, I know already.
You need Miss Ellington?
Yeah.
Grab like 10 pockets open.
I'm a mess.
I see some things in there. I shouldn't say.
She looks like she's ready to go camping, pop out for 10 minutes.
The way it was like AJ just walking out the street, back open. She's so tired.
A jug of lotion.
Crusty also staring
You're still ashy.
Excuse me. This California weather drives me up like a damn.
Get you some lotion.
I'm like beef jerky out here.
Is he still recording us?
Yeah, I'm dehydrated and it's out.
Edit that out, Brian.
I need some thirsty spray. I think he stopped it. Oh, it's probably not working. Oh yeah, it is recording. I just get famous on YouTube.
You said I'm like beef jerky. I forgot to put this on
I'm sorry about that.
I emailed.
Oh, they just have it. So you don't have to back here, okay? So, you don't have to take your stuff. You don't have to leave it up. So you're gonna come back over here when you're done with your whole thing. Oh, I see. Okay. Right. Okay, so I've got to have more than A4. So I need to have yeah, because I should have John and Miriam. So, okay, so John and Christina are over there, so you're here, so I just need Miriam. And then
The juice plate. The juice plate.
Hannah, you're gonna be with me. Will you come over here just while we like get started?
Miss Lenny, can you sign my
You guys are gonna be working with everything that we just discussed, okay? Make sure you have your liner as well as your 15, 16. You are working just on the posteriors with those instruments. Miss Lennon is also gonna put the kind of in circulation. So try to give that a try as well. Try that double fulcrum that she was talking about. Also a posterior instrument, okay? Okay, folks. If you have a patient tomorrow, the forms to be able to be prepared are up here. You're responsible for those. Remember, no patient identifying information on the papers. When you're done looking at your patient's chart, you're going to sign out of Axiom and log off. I have your faculty evaluation rubrics up here, so you're responsible for putting your full name, your box number, the date, and your on your form. Your instructor is going to sign their name. Don't sign for the instructor. Make sure that they sign you off and that you get to see that. Last call for your paper charting assignment for charting existing restorations. I am going to send the 17, 18s around for you to play with a bit. We are starting with evens over here, so odds, love you, go over there. And you're going to come to us because I'm about done walking for today. Questions? Good? All right, let's do it. Oh, we're going to practice the things that we reviewed today as far as your minis, mini extendeds, the 15, 16, the 17, 18, the Langer 3, 4. But also then when you're on the other side, when you're on the other side, you need to be doing homework of what am I going to be assessed on? What are you going to be assessed on, guys? Explorer.
And Grace. Curet.
Curet. Sickle. Pro? We're doing a pro. We're doing a pro. UNC. Check out the angulation. All right, and go.
Okay, so what the big thing that you guys want to do is with your mini braces, we kind of already practiced on the lower anterior, so there's no need to, like beat it against boards. Does everyone kind of get the mini braces on the lower anteriors? I mean, it's obvious, or it's kind of a pretty straightforward instrument. We're going to go ahead and try that though in areas where we would have rotations or some sort of concavity, just so we get the experience of utilizing them on a little bit of a challenging area. Remember this microscope on scientific as just like, oh, I'm going to go just kind of do a selfie. Your mini is a super specialized instrument, and because of that, it's utilized when we have really deep narrow pockets, when we have perforations, we've got multiple roots, so we're feeling around the root surface. It's not really an instrument that you're going to pick up with your prophy, and it's like, I'm going to do an entire prophy with like my friction working, my level level. It's used in a much more irregular sense. So you want to have the smallest when you're using it in a smaller area. When we lower anterior and we've got that real short kind of curvature of the gingiva, it's kind of a perfect area because the instrument doesn't want to stay down. It's That's going to be a good kind of universal implementation of posterior. So that larger goes to kind of use that as
Yeah, so it's really if you need to organize your thoughts. So if you've had the patient before, it might not be that big a deal.
Yeah, it's not so good for me.
So stick with just the mesial surface for that. Feel good? Okay, go ahead and grab a grading sheet and fill that out. We're working until about 3:30, okay? So we want to. I just need my. Switched over by that. Oh, gotcha. Well, anyway.
I need to send you pictures.
What? She's up everything.
Okay, so this guy, something here that very bendy. These are sharpened down to a little nothing.
You guys, honestly, you can work with it. Whatever you want to work with. Just realize you have to be better by group. So keep that in the back of your mind when you go that through. I mean, it's almost finished like 5 minutes, but by the time we have, what, 5 minutes? Yeah, it's 25 minutes. So train yourself about 5 to 7
Would I be able to save it? Yeah.
So I don't know if it's really important to set up your whole tablet in half an hour, but I mean, I want you to kind of practice. You do get some practice, so for your hands, but we're going to kind of practice on over here. So if you want to try to stand up, it's up to you, but I have to teach you that. Okay.
This guy.
So being like, what are you doing right now?
So if you want to do it,
Lower hand because of that. So now,
okay, let's take a
the
look.
handle is way out.
Did you get signed off already?
Signed off?
For like your teeth?
Yeah.
Yeah. On top of the teeth.
Here, but you've got to bring your hand down as far as you can. I get me on the side of my finger. And maybe pull exactly this way. And make my hand roll forward. So you got to get your knee
Try not to have what's happening is that this finger right here is supposed to try to be like stacked.
The same idea of trying to smush your hand down.
Absolutely. You want to think when you're using your Graceys mini, it's like, it's a super scratchy. So it's kind of like if you were vacuuming or whatever, and then you get like a little extension, but you're not going to go clean the whole floor with that extension. Like, it's going to take you forever. But it's like, in those specific areas, it's like absolutely cool. And that's kind of what your Graceys is, or your Graceys is. Like, in that specific area, just like a reason, that's where it looks like you. So use your 11, 12. So 13, 14 for distals. But you have to analyze you have honor and honor choose that application. You're gonna do that 11, 12 to the mesials of those groups, and then the 13, 14 to take that of the distal. So it's almost like you're scaling it. But add on here. So make sure you catch up. And they ask it in front of us, but make sure you don't get knocked up on the region.
Yeah, okay, but we can throw.
Super clear, but let me try now.
Okay, yeah, because I asked them and they were a little unsure.
Yeah, so, and because
last year they said
one
once
book
a
says
year.
yes,
Yeah,
and one book says no.
yeah, okay, good, yeah, do it.
He says research seems like it says no, but he thinks yes.
Okay, so gentle probing.
Well, what's
I mean, definitely.
I mean, it is what he does.
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
But, you know, I had somebody that had a completely catastrophic failure between last time we saw her and yesterday.
Oh, I saw that.
Right? And mostly to me, that seems like what
I count on the yearly paper to tell us what to do.
Yeah, so he said yes.
Okay.
But I gotta make sure that's clear.
Okay.
On the mesial, right? And that's your 11, 12? Yeah.
Now, are you with this group yet?
But that's a good start. So good. You see like, and it's like distal root, and it's like, or the distal surface of the distal root is 13, 14. The distal surface of the mesial root is also 13, 14. You know what I mean?
Yeah, kind of.
It's like the root is like almost divided as two teeth. So you do the distal root with the distal surface of the distal root, 13, 14, move to the mesial, that's going to be 11, 12. Then you move to the mesial root, distal is going to be 13, 14. And then mesial is going to be 11, 12.
That makes sense.
So it's like,
back and forth. Like
yeah, back and forth, back and forth. Yep.
No, I was just gonna say, do you want me to keep her?
Oh, no, it's okay. But unless it's easier for you.
I might think about it. Okay, I'll let you know because yeah, my family
Does it? So that's what I mean. They're going to ask you that. They're going to be like, when would you use a 13 and it'll be something like, I don't know how to ask the question, but it's something like right. When on the mesial root, you're going to use up the distal. On the distal root, you're going to use up. And then on the mesial, and then you know what I mean? then you would go up to the next one. Exactly. And then you start to move to your 11 o'clock. Does that make sense? Okay, cool.
Oh, I see. That's how we have.
So they can
And then we ended up buying them from
So yeah, this instrument you're not going to use it a lot on like just for you're going to use it more so on you're going to use it more so on like the SRP patient. Because with a puppy, you're not really like doing it very specific. You're trying to get all of it off at once. You're not working on one thing. Whereas with like chairs over there. So okay with it? Yeah.
And then same with this one.
Yeah. So,
He's like, okay.
is that the 13, 14? So the 13, 14 is the one that you kind of use on the lower end.
You still want that triple shepherd upright?
I felt great. So that's just like, and essentially what they did is, this is essentially what happened.
So when you're on that left side,
They did that it's like a great instrument, but it's not just it. That's the thing that it can do little hand or either. So it's a newer instrument, and I think a lot of people are complaining about maybe 13, 14 years. So they took like 13, 14 and then just eliminated it. So it adapts exactly like 13, 14 years. It looks like a 13, 14, but both sides are cut across.
So then I can use it.
So just use it mostly in your posteriors right now because it's a pretty large instrument. So trying to get it in between the gums and whatnot, it's going to be very
Any more questions? Yeah, I know. All right, let me know if you want to.
Karen, are you yes?
And then if I want to go on this side, I put the folder.
Good job. So, what is your
Right now we're doing the
Oh, okay. So it's trying to be
it has to be like the oral.
No worries, sorry. Because your contact all in a little bit, that intention of trying to lower that's right. So there you go. Region 10 kilos. Yes. So what they did is they essentially drove the entire instrument and all the fences and whatnot, and then they just manipulate it and very much with it. So they were so it's very that the fact that it's a little bit wider, I would recommend just not being too narrow interior with it, just because I think you're going to have because it's just too big to fit that hurts interior. Yes, from the shanks got to be like that. It needs to be adapted. So, next thing if you got questions about the music, or the 1516, So, questions, what's stressing you out as far as Graceys? Anything you know about? Anything else you're like, yes, I want to try this now?
Is there a limit to how much or what's the amount of calculus in proximal from the anterior, the menu
So, it's what you check.
No, the worst part is that it was a land.
The music.
All the right.
I'm just gonna lay down in the lounge.
Okay.
So I and somehow dropped and then and then move the body and then you can see. So it's like when you're moving over, it's really sight of like what's going on. So that's the most challenging part. You're so excited on the line.
So, not rigid. Okay. So what does that say?
I know it's like light calculus, but the when, like how do we know when to use the mini versus like that simple like the
What's the signal good for?
or I guess big or like that since that might be in concept.
Rigid, stuff, white surfaces, okay, so, doesn't mean you can't do all kinds of things with a bigger thing, which is harder. So, then, the 13, 14, and maybe is little pieces lower. Okay, so 15, 16. Liners, you can use those in like the way the liners. So, you're starting on the angle and what's the difference? Graceys is already doing it. So internal shanks are really straight.
So one of the things I wanted to
No, yeah, because this set already has one. It's the sets that are like that. So did you try?
Yeah, I have all of mine.
And they all went out pretty easily. So hopefully they don't break.
No, I mean it's they go pretty good. I hope it's not I'm trying to do my 10. I'll go like after this part. I hope like you start from like so implementation. You got that, big fella? You got that.
You like for this, like the black still soft, and this pepper is still soft. No, it is. It's like scale, I scale and black pepper powder. What chips? It's just, you know. I have a hard time switching from
Yeah, that was the
Yes.
One more thing.
You know what's such? No.
I don't even want to hear this.
It's not like I can't. You guys don't look at nothing legit. You guys don't look at like, for some reason, like since the beginning, I called you will see when I call her to me. So like I know you guys.
Are these all the ones that we worked with today? Can we look at what dress you're gonna wear? Or do you still should be pointing out towards the
Go back for your case.
Yeah, I want to try the 17. Wasn't meant to be. Hey, how you? Did you ever get the last thing from your black thing where it happens? About sleep? That's what I was doing. Is it? Yeah, we're like talking about it. Right? Alright, because like, I feel like I have to have myself, I'm like, put it to sterilize. I haven't done it yet. You know what they're trying to do? So you know that I would have my first time like this. But what I was thinking, you should have seen it. I just always forget how to do it. I have an instrument in my instrument beside it. I'm looking to it. The good ones. So this is the only cassette that we can handle.
That's like completely.
Oh, we're on my screen. Yeah, then like next week I'm bringing my concerns over. I want to work on. Oh, he doesn't want to. Are you having your boy having a banquet?
Well, you're looking at a, when you're looking at a, presentation.
I've never had it like this.
So look at 30 really quick.
The thing they did is very serious. I was just looking at it and I was like,
So it's 13, 14. Is this club number 3? That, what's that? You ready? So distal and the distal root, good, yes? Okay. I think it's distal of the mesial.
we don't know.
I want to stick wrist towards you. Okay, so when you look at 30, when you're passing for cases, it's essentially 2 people, right? So don't forget that 13, 14, especially the beginning, will be the distal of the distal root, and the distal of the mesial root in the rotation.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Heidi. You said that so wrong, and you're laughing at me. Bonjour, je
So you're supposed to change it. I mean, you are supposed to.
You are? Okay, that's good to know.
Have you done it? We'll do that after class.
Right there, the little black thing, right? Are you sure? What is it?
Black suit or camel one?
What is it called?
Black suit.
Black sleeve.
Yeah, you have to put it in the thing.
Okay, that's good to know.
Okay, the time has come, the all too short time. We're going to go ahead and switch. Before you move, everybody turn off your section for a minute, and let me just say one thing about this morning. Why do you build a time delay into suction turning off? I don't understand that part of the machine. Okay, so Dr. Ken, remember we talked about, so Dr. Ken, do we probe or not probe? I don't know if he stated clearly enough to you, so I pinned him down at the end. We're probing. We're probing gently, really, really gently. And what are the big things that we're going to look at? There were two factors he really talked about besides probing. Mobility, superpower, X-rays, right? So X-rays, mobility. If the patient does not have mobility on a single unit restoration, and they do not have problems in the bone level radiographically, then we're probably good. Remember how you said it shouldn't be more than 0.2 millimeters per year after the first year, Yeah, 0.2 millimeters. You can look at the threads and kind of tell, but it's very challenging. But if you see like a whole thread difference, Katie, bar the door, we're in trouble, let's get on that now. So how often are we going to take radiographs on implants? Every year. What kind of radiograph are we going to take? Probably a PA. Okay? And we're going to try to take it at a very similar angle every year so we can see really across the threads. And you just got to keep on top of those people. How often are we going to bring them back? So in the beginning, we're going to see them every time the wind changes, right? You just see them a bunch. You're going to see them at least every 3 months the first year. After that, 3 to 6 months. Man, they better really impress me if I'm going to let them go away for 6 months. Okay, I'm sticking with 3 most of the time. All right, let's switch. I'm going to start a pile up here for your evaluations. Make sure it's signed off all the way by your instructor. If you do not have a patient tomorrow, do not waste any time, A, getting the stuff off your typewriter for next week, and B, making sure you're ready for assessment. Assessment is coming.
What they put in that.
Thank
Yeah. I was actually setting up over there and I realized I'm yeah, like
It wasn't where I no problem. I don't want to have to buy a new one. So, you guys want to take a study sheet 18 and we'll get this shot? So this is distal of posterior molar. So you're gonna use this to adapt to like your
I know, it's so pretty.
yes, that's the
That's what I'm trying to do about these. Is it too early? You have the number?
Remind me at the end.
Okay.
Thank you.
So you want to still scale for the session, but you have to be careful because people will scale and they'll and they'll actually start to scale the line. You need to like scale it, but if you don't feel or see any problems, then it's going to be a little bit rougher. It's going to be easier or rougher than a nail because dentin or cementum is going to have a little bit more of like a texture to it. Perfect. Yeah. And honestly, the captron, if the patient is sensitive, the captron's going to get better for scaling the session than your than hand because you won't gouge out the teeth.
This is mesials. It's off. That's what I felt. That's why I'm like, I don't remember doing so much.
Yeah. What do you think? Would you use it or not?
I would use this. I feel like I'm not.
It's off.
It's different. But it kind of just wants to adapt to the tooth, which is nice. I don't feel like you really have to adjust your hand much. It just kind of does what it's supposed to do. They do if you want to buy them or whatever. So try to remove that.
Okay. Okay.
No, so all of these instruments, you wouldn't use them on implants. You have to make sure that you can take the implant appropriate.
I want to learn how much one is anyway.
Okay. Everything is it. Except, certain portions right
I guess I'm just missing the dog. He loves us. And then once you guys are done with those a little bit, I'll select them and go to the next group. No point in getting too attached to them. But if you are interested, we'll try to get up and you're like being important, you can definitely go up and look into
a molar is your 13, 14 year knee. And
that is correct.
two of those will go across.
And this one
Wait, when you guys were with your board?
A molar.
and it goes along heavy posterior, and it's a good instrument in this situation.
13 words?
13 words. Now, so the big thing I want, the big thing that I want you guys to be aware of
Maddie, and
is when you're working on root 13, 14, and your 11, 12 disease,
Wait, what?
when you are doing root surfaces with those instruments, you need to realize that you're going to be using
So how far across will the regular surgeon
on the distal of the posterior and the distal of the root. Then you're going to do some basketball on the knee.
So have you noticed when you're scaling and when you're watching us scale in this floor, it's not like we do the 50.
Right. So it's almost like when a tooth has two roots, it's almost like acts as two separate teeth. It's not like you go distal mesial for the first one and then distal mesial again for the second. Make sense? John, go ahead and give one of these a try, okay? This is the second. So you're going to use it on the posterior. still in town. I can tell you. Okay, let me sign you.
So when you have parchment, explore, and scale, are we stopping at the 51%?
Instruct yourself.
Right? How far do we go?
You guys go, what's more than 51%?
Right?
Hug it, you hug it, give it a good hug.
This. So if you want to do this and you'll like do double coverage from the facial and the lingual, then which of these instruments are you use? Right? Okay. So now you can use cultivating up to the right angle. Good line angle, yes? When you're trying to do a line angle with your right foot. What do you think?
I'm just taking the.
I can just hear you sliding everywhere, right? Careful. So, don't make me have your guy, especially with the line angle. Really can help you with your vertical stroke. You know, you really carry that whole curve as you just line. The facial is oh my gosh, got my secretary. And that would actually. Okay, so the big thing is. Right, so once you're not all that this, same thing. You go towards the back.
Just make sure that you kind of It's nice because it's just natural. It doesn't seem like it takes a lot of effort. It's right
Gets the biggest surface. Most surface. Okay, so yeah.
So where are we practicing right now?
So I don't really care where you practice. I'd like you to work a little bit with your 13, 14 mini and your 11, 12 mini on some of your patients. So maybe like on, are you guys on the right side here? You are, right?
Yeah.
So let's do like number 30 and 31. Try to really
No matter 1, 13, 14, or anything.
Nope. Well, the 13, 14 you'll do distals and then the 11, 12 you'll do curets. But other than that,
So that you can get to places that have been hard. So again, students got it, weeks and insanes. Here's the next. Okay. Here's the other. Instructors. part of the pocket, right? Because if your terminal shank is sticking out at a funny angle, you're blocked out by the tissue, you will not be able to reach into the pocket.
Oh, that's good though.
So now, did you guys try do this for me?
To try to adapt this to a like this.
Distal upper.
With the mini.
So what was happening is you were kind of staying, you didn't have the whole cutting edge kind of lined up against the tooth. You just kind of had the very, very tip, so you're sliding off.
And at distal buckle 30, we're happy in that distal buckle angle, right? And remember, you've got another tooth back there.
No, not really. You just go upstairs and you're on clinic and you just have your partner up and you get your instruments and you just have that seat that kind of walk around and you'll just watch your instruments on 2-3 feet. So one person will be like, oh, I'm that, and then whatever. And you just kind of go around and you just kind of watch it. So it's not bad.
Okay. So happy
That I'm not sure. I believe it's the partner that you already have done. Yes. Right. That's still, the next time you get checked off, that's the it's not
Okay.
They have extended chain. Unless there's just other
Okay, so okay. Okay, so okay, so now has two roots, right? So what other surface of the root is the new 13, 14 going to fit?
Oh, yes, yes.
Where?
Mesial, buckle,
Mesial buckle root or the distal buckle root?
Mesial side of the root. I'm sorry, the distal side of the
Mesial
root. Not mesial buckle. Sometimes there's, but mostly it's just two. So if it fits the distal of the tooth, it's going to fit the distal of the mesial root, right? So distal to distal root, distal to mesial root. So you and Ariana love to live, calm down. Calm. There you go. Remember, you're going to stack these guys up. 1, 2, 3. Good. And then your thumb on top. But what happened, sorry, but what happened to your wrist and your elbow side? So starting here, right? See what's over there? This chicken wing sticking out, right? Because here's the sad thing about the chicken wing sticking out. And I'll show you next with different sides. Now mine's doing a weird crack. So then stand right on top of the side of this finger. There you go. Beautiful. Right up on the side there. Okay. Stand up tall this way. So sit over there. There you go. You guys lined up. More friendly to your thumb. A little bit. There you go. Now put it down here. And then that's really good. Yeah, but I want you to just do it like one of the gym. There you go. Okay, you got to stand right on top. Okay, so that when your thumb curls in there, it's going to do, go back to, remember when we talked about your thumb, your thumb, you're going to squeeze together. All tight together. So don't think this way, don't pinch your hand, get on top instead, and think of your whole hand, your thumb and your pinky come together. So your thumb is pushing this instrument handle to that X. Chicken wing. But the thing that will fix the chicken wing is this breath. So don't worry about the chicken wing, worry about your breath. Yep. And your thumb wants to come around the corner. Your thumb wants to push your finger down onto this middle finger. And push your whole hand down. Hold a nice tight grasp. And your thumb is going to rock the handle back. Now press the curve. Love it. There you go. See the difference? Okay. Right? But don't let it slide off. You got to keep that middle finger. Okay. Sorry. It's okay. Sorry. you have teeth marks? You're doing it right. Everybody look at your ring finger. Do you have teeth marks?
Yes.
Yes. Look at those teeth marks. Ouch. It gets better. Okay. So, scale stones.
Now you can find how the next one and just watch up. And then get over it to your
Then make sure when you're sharpening. So, it is making sense to make sure we have that.
So basically, it's looking at the regular. And the regular.
Yeah, it's a little crazy. Okay, let's put facial with, okay, let's do 11, 12. Okay, so, sorry, let's go back to the buffalo 30 for a second. All right, so pick up your 11, 12 mini. So our 13, 14 mini worked with this distal of the distal of the distal root, distal of the mesial root. Okay, what's going to work on the mesial of the distal root?
Well, it depends. When you're doing root planing, yes. But when you're doing scaling, you want short, light strips. Yeah.
Yep.
And you just work.
So what do you know is a 13, 14? So the mesial root answer right?
I would start at the depth of the
Yeah, sorry, but it's also going to work on the mesial of the distal root. Make sense? The 11, 12. Okay, don't throw the rules out the window on this part.
The shank points towards, it's very, the shank is so tiny. So it points towards the eye.
So, is it saying up and away?
Yeah.
Right.
But it's the lower, it's on the same side of it.
It's the same side as the elbow.
Yeah. Okay. I have the
You need your kids with their seatbelt on, right? 13, 14 is always distal. 11, 12 is always mesial. Except, of course, I just threw you under the bus today. 13, 14. I couldn't restrain myself, sorry.
sorry.
It's okay. No. Okay. So was the expedition we had the 13, 14 maybe on the end?
I lost where you say.
I've seen some that you get. So, let's go to the facial
You're like, oh my gosh. Okay, just like the more
Put your water away. We're gonna tell you something. It's trippy.
Okay, so I have to figure out which side it is upside down. But same thing.
So if it was me, I'd put more to the top position. And then you can like reach a little bit away from you. And then you can fall from here. Is that better?
So is it starting to happen?
Where is she?
Remember when I said, oh my gosh, you're going to get to the point where you don't need the extra roll, you actually like put it in the roll and then roll? Yes.
I realized when I trained, I pulled it up.
Yes.
I think it slips when I rotate. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yes. So do I. Since that's what they pay me for. That's what you pay me for.
Yes.
So fix the crust and the chicken wing will fix itself.
Yeah. So just kind of take it like one stroke at a time. Did it?
So, don't do a big curly thing with your hand to make the you can make the instrument touch it. When you go in there, if you want to do the mesial, then have it facing so it's going to touch the mesial.
Okay.
Okay?
Instead of like twisting my hand.
Yeah, oh, yes. Don't do that. Okay? So, go in there already with your great craft and your instrument already pointing. Because why would you do a crazy thing with your hand for 25 years?
For some reason I felt
Right?
I have to go like on the facial and then walk my way into it.
So this is going to be mostly line angle, right? And so you're going to start on the facial and go this way. Right? Which is not spectacular. Here we go. And you would do this part, right? And then when it started getting weird, rolling off all the stuff. So go ahead and go back in, readapt. Regular Graceys, yes.
Oh, okay.
Regular Graceys, same thing. If you're going to do a mesial, come on in there and touch down the mesial with your thumb and able to push this up.
Hey, guys have to sit down, okay? We're going to be back on the
Back up here, because these two guys should be pushed between the handle and the teeth. Right? You guys are doing this. They're resisting.
no. I think my water I don't know what they're doing.
Okay.
It's just
So, instead of where should we do this? Okay. Okay, so I was doing this. Okay. Okay. Instead of this, and choose
So it's a newer muscle that's not. So your biggest thing is to
correct. There you go. Much better. Okay, so you got some feeling where you figured it out.
There's some extra carriers that's supposed to go with that desk, but all these things are
I'll put it on for you. I will try to do the white side of your stone lower back and these little guys.
the whole right side. Oh,
I only got to use it for us.
All right.
I'm like halfway done. That's why it's why I would stay on Friday.
Yes! Oh my god, you're supposed to It's awesome.
So, what does someone say?
I forget, but I
Don't panic. Don't panic. Don't panic. And what else do you need?
the Hobbit.
You need to tell.
Why do you need, I don't, I didn't get it. Your hair. You don't like sci-fi, huh? I like all the sci-fi. Those are dope. I love it.
Did you only try 15,
15, 16. The red one?
and did you get to try your lighters before?
Oh, I want to try the
Purple liner.
Linger is for mesial end.
Yeah, this one's correct. So is it slight, moderate, or severe? Is what they want to know.
It is universal curret, but it's really bendy shank. Do you know how we tried the 15, 16 facial?
This is where you take up here, I consider all of your animal follicles.
Now, if you're a ginormous vacation,
Or, sorry, anatomical is up here. Any sort of restoration goes down here. And then active decay goes right there. And then down here, write any teeth that have, and then write any teeth that
so which bend
have over 50%.
so think of it as
Yeah.
14 Columbia for 214. And it'll work for you. But it's not necessarily going to be your first thing for facial and surgical. And now see how you have to lean your handle up and down to get to the mesial and distal to adapt correctly because it's universal. And if you have a really big fixation, like you might be able to get in the fixation on buckle 3. On a real person, remember, when you're at the premolars, your patient will just close for you. But when you're practicing extra oral fulcrum, it's usually your better angle, more realistic angle is going to be at the teeth number 1 and 2, just because you typed up open too well. just like I said, don't scrunch your hand. Also, don't scrunch your neck. So, maxillary arch patient position is what? Which is? Yes. Mandibular arch is going to be mostly like.
Is this good for next week?
Next week, sorry, it's just the microscope assignment. You got 2 weeks to get everything on.
Oh. Microscope, but you said that the microscope assignment is that one, right?
No,
No? Oh, okay.
that was the charting and system restoration. So, yeah, my bad on the microscope assignment. I have the wrong date here. It's correctly in
So what
the
is the
canvas.
microscope assignment?
Oh, don't worry.
So we don't have to do it by next week?
Don't worry. No. That's going to be the lab.
Oh, okay.
It's time.
Okay. It's timed, you said?
No.
Oh, okay.
This is on to me. Yep, it's time. Okay.
I need to work with my fingers again.
Yeah. We're having a hard time with your grasp.
Yes. I guess I'm ahead of the game.
So Nadine, if you want just a separate little,
I think I'm gonna do that.
one of these, they're actually up in the front. Okay, my fabulous people. I'm not going to kick you out yet, but keep working on what you need to if you need to. But we're going to start wrapping up, and I want you to have time to do your reflection by 6 o'clock. Okay. So, oops, my bad. Microscope assignment due today, not due today, that's next week. It's all going to happen in lab. You'll just turn in everything by the end of the lab session. So, don't worry about that. Just go in there and change it to the 23rd. 23rd, yeah. Change that to the 23rd right now so it doesn't continue to freak you out. Sorry. Okay, questions? That's the alarm clock going. You're done. Okay. Make sure again that you get your faculty evaluation signed off, that you turn it in to me because you're responsible for that it has all the things on it, and that you've reflected on all the things on it, that you have your box number, date, all of those things so I can keep track of you. Anything else you can think of? I think we're good. So turn in all the papers up front and work to your heart's content unless anybody has to use this space. Hang on to these guys. I'm going to come back to y'all.
I love that. I went to a wedding. No, they did not. Because my friend was from my house. Love all.
Okay. So keep thinking about the concept.
Not even one, no.
So keep thinking about your concept. Want to get in there, approach it, ready for the place up, and take a look. This is the only thing you can think twice. Have your grasp. So I'm going to say approach. With instrument. Angles. Ready to scale. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Good. And then grasp, position, adaptation. Definitely hope that you're really good at that. So sorry, there's just a certain amount of pain.
I know. I'm just a big baby.
So, the flexible fabric bandages, you can use the baby size of those when you're working on your pivot on it. It's a little less. Okay. So,
I was trying to contact you and you said,
I really don't,
okay? I'm just looking at those plants. I'll be perfectly fine in 15 seconds. This is together. Everything was crossed together.
I might just be 45. Yeah, but doesn't that go to next year's fees?
Sorry.
Is she coming to us? Well,
Otherwise, you're okay.
I think just let it know.
I guys have lessons for not there.
I need my whole cassette of 17, 18s back, wherever those wound up.
Don't believe him.
You know, you're not meant for this life. This shirt.
Okay.
The one that she brought up, that is a... You know, dude, most dads are hot. Like, I come hard. But you think that I will just go whenever I want to get my email, girl? So I'll get my smile. Where you want to go sometime? This library? You was being funny.